He's looking at what has caused change in the history of the world, Karl Marx, and it was through conflict. One group having a conflict over another group, and once the conflict is over, the change that results. Okay, he studied that. He saw, for instance, in Europe, you had a conflict between the merchants and the royalty. And eventually, the conflict between the two, there was a fight, you know, they both had their soldiers, the merchants in Western Europe versus the royalty, the kings of Western Europe. And eventually, what happened was the merchants won. And what happened was the merchants were no longer merchants. People who came from royal backgrounds or aristocrats were no longer that. They all became capitalists. That's the change that occurred. Here was the beginning of capitalism. The end of feudalism and the beginning of capitalism, okay? But there was originally a conflict between the two. Very, very interesting. He had why it started, by the way, why capitalism started in Western Europe, boys and girls, first than any other part of the world. The merchants succeeded in overthrowing the aristocrats. If that had occurred, say, in Africa first, our history would be different right now. Because you've always had that going on, merchants against aristocrats, whether the aristocrat was the emperor, the king, dukes, whatever, okay? And that was going on for centuries. But what happened was the merchants won in Europe, Western Europe first. And once capitalism started there, well, it spread all over the world. Okay, that's why you had England conquering so many nations, France, the Netherlands, Germans. Okay, very interesting how that happened when you look at that history. Inevitable class conflict will lead to social revolution. Well, that's been the history of the world. Classes have been conflicting with each other, and revolutions have occurred, whether it's the merchants against the aristocrats, but also what Marx argues is workers against capitalists is going to be a major conflict, and that will lead to what Marx was talking about, the next stage. And the next stage, what he was referring to is economic democracy. Now, Marx used the word socialism. Socialism has many meanings, boys and girls. What Marx meant by socialism was economic democracy, not the socialism that was set up, not totalitarian bureaucracy. If you read Marx, he was against that. Okay, not a dictatorship. So sometimes that's what socialism means, dictatorship, you know, that we take it to mean that. He was against that, okay. Also, Marx, if you look at socialism sometimes means the government runs everything. No, he's talking about the people running the government. He's talking, and if you read what he wrote, he's talking about people running it democratically. It's very clear, and that's in the Paris Commune, and that's going to be in when he wrote the Paris Commune. We're going to talk about that in a future episode also. Unfortunately, boys and girls, we can't talk all about this now. We only have, the network only gives us a half hour, not even a half hour. So I can't talk about all these things, so we have to save it to future episodes. But this is just an introduction as far as, when we talk about social revolution and what Marx was all about. Okay. By the way, there was this group right before Marx died. They called themselves Marxist. And they said things that were really contrary to what Marx was all about. And a reporter interviewed Marx and asked him, well, what do you think of this group? They said this, this, and this, and they called themselves Marxists. And Marx replied, I'm not a Marxist. So I thought it was a cute story. Okay, let's move on. Social arrangements reflect economic arrangements. In other words, to understand how people behave, how they do things, their values, their culture, you have to look at how things are arranged economically. Okay. Their environment. In other words, their environment leads to the social arrangements. Okay. For instance, why did the Egyptian Empire, why did they have great farming? As a matter of fact, why did Egypt have the best farming system until the 1700s? You know why, boys and girls? Economic arrangements influence social arrangements. That's another way of saying what I said. Or also what's included in economic arrangements, environmental arrangements. Egypt had the Nile River. There was great farming. That's why they had advanced farming. You've got to have the right environment to set up certain things, and then once you're able to set up farming, an advanced farming economy, then you're able to set up even a more advanced type of society involving a more, certain culture, a more powerful military, because you could, more people are able to survive. So this is what Marx said. He saw this in the history of the world. This helps us understand things. Why England became the most powerful country in the world for the longest time? Well, they were the first country to develop, or one of the first countries to develop, market economy. Market economy encourages technology. The merchants won there first. They became capitalists. They encouraged more technology. Well, England basically conquered the world. Also, Germany, roughly around the same time, developed the market economy. Their merchants won out. And think about it. You had World War I, World War II. Wasn't that war England against Germany? Two capitalist countries. Okay, if you look at it. It's very interesting, different way of looking at things, boys and girls. Social arrangements reflect economic arrangements. And let me give you another example. First, what is the four-letter word of the day before we give that example? The four-letter word is ball, boys and girls. A ball is a round body. The plural of ball is balls. Okay, so let's go right into social arrangements reflect economic arrangements. The lower class boys and girls, the poor, play basketball. They have basketballs. Hey, you see that, boys and girls? How the social reflect the economic. You're poor. Okay, that's the economic. You're playing basketball. That's the social arrangement. Okay, and they have basketballs. The working class boys and girls, you look at the United States, they play football. They have footballs. Okay, see? The economic is working class. You see the social arrangement, playing football, having footballs. Okay, the middle class, they play baseball, boys and girls. They have baseballs. Once again, the economic arrangement's middle class. The social arrangement is playing baseball, having baseballs. And finally, you have the upper class, boys and girls. That's the rich. They play golf. They have golf balls. Once again, the economic arrangements, upper class. The social arrangement, playing golf, having golf balls. Hey, you know what, boys and girls? You notice there's a pattern here? You notice the higher the class, the smaller the balls? Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Twilight Zone, boys and girls. Another episode, Night of the Meek. This is a great Rod Serling TV show. This one is entitled Night of the Meek. And here, like all his Twilight Zones, they're dream sequences, and they have social conscious message. And on this show, we believe the social conscious message that Rod Serling is talking about as a radical left. We look at this from a radical left interpretation. And in our case, our radical left interpretation is an economic democratic one. Okay. Now, looking at this, this Twilight Zone is about, you see Santa Claus. This guy plays Santa Claus. He's a drunk. Okay, he's drinking at the bar, and the kids are waiting for him at the store. Okay, he goes to the store drunk, and you see that why he drinks, because he lives in a poor area, and he just hates seeing kids suffer and the people suffering in this poor area. And he even says, why can't one day the meek inherit the earth? Why is this so much suffering? As a matter of fact, you see a scene where two little kids run up to him and they ask him for, Santa Claus to give him a gift, and one is saying, could you please, we could have food on the table for Christmas Day, turkey, and another kid asks, could you get my daddy a job, this type of thing. So you see the poverty that's going on, and you can see why the character who's dressed up in a Santa Claus outfit, drinks. Now what happens in this Twilight Zone, he finds a magical bag where it just produces gifts. Okay, and he's giving gifts to all the boys and girls, and whatever gift they want, he's just giving it to them. And it's very interesting to see how this works out. It's kind of interesting as they show a religious woman, some Christian organization, working with the homeless people in that area, but not really giving what these people want. And here comes Santa Claus helping out these homeless people. It's just very interesting how that's done, or I should say the guy who's dressed up as Santa Claus with the magical bag. Anyway, the show ends. He wishes he could do this every year, and he becomes Santa Claus. He really becomes Santa Claus at the end of the year.